Speaking of Half-Life 2 being personalized and, spooky shit like that, I always was kind of fascinated by the so-called AI director in Left 4 Dead. I just thought that shit was super spooky. The idea that it was like real and like thinking and like putting the NPCs there. I mean, it's basically a glorified rubber band AI, but it's still cool to think of it like that as like being like a conscious entity or whatever. And I think that might be part of the mystique of the game and also add to the horror of it. But, on the whole personalized thing, I remember that being in a part of Left 4 Dead 2. There's some kind of maze area that's actually randomly generated. Well, it's not random. There's multiple different forms it could take, but it's based off of how well you're doing. So, like, if you've been doing well, the maze is going to be more complicated or whatever. It's in one of the maps. Maybe they've got multiple. I think there's multiple different areas that are sort of like that. To some degree, they're, randomized or whatever. And it made me think about emergent gameplay. And that's sort of a problem I've had since I started playing games online, actually. And one of the things I noticed was that I always liked being a sniper in, like Counter-Strike or Day of Defeat. But it was essentially impossible because everybody had already played the games, played the maps rather, or most players had. It wasn't like their first day or whatever, right? So they pretty much already knew where everything was at and where to expect players. And, you get the pre-firing motherfuckers, right? They just shoot through the wall, because there's probably somebody there or whatever type bullshit. But it made me realize that, you know, there's kind of no surprises. And then, if you think about it, like, how exactly would you make a level for a multiplayer game that would be engaging for experienced players, but at the same time be a map they've never played before, right? And I don't know. I just always like the idea of being able to find little hiding spots, and you call it camping if you want, but, I always love doing sniper stuff, just being able to hide, like, some like deathmatch type of Counter-Strike servers. I would always try to find places in the map where I could hide that nobody would go, and just see how long I could basically have nobody find me, or try to find the places that basically nobody in the map would go to. But that sort of brings me to Half-Life Alyx, and that's what made me think of this. Because I was watching something on Half-Life Alyx, and I didn't know really kind of anything about it. Because when I heard it was a VR gimmick game, I'm like, really? 20 years and you're going to give us a VR gimmick? Fuck you. No episode 3, no Half-Life 3, whatever, fuck it. But where I've been doing all the engine stuff, like reading the, developer wiki, all that shit, I've read some of the stuff on Source 2, and I ended up on the Half-Life Alyx page. One of the first things I noticed is that Alyx in, Half-Life Alyx looks, a lot different. Instead of looking Blasian, she just looks Asian, which is weird because, this is a video I saw a little while ago that apparently the actual voice actor of Alyx didn't even do her in Half-Life Alyx. They replaced her with some other chick, and the dude in the video basically had my conclusion. It's like, why the fuck are you going to change the voice actor? And, it's probably, you know, socio-political chicanery going on with the change. But either way, you know, the longtime players of the game are going to be pissed about that, like I am now. But like the worst part about it is that apparently they already had all the dialogue recorded by her, and then all of a sudden at the last minute get this new voice actor, and it's like you had to know that was going to piss off fans of the series. And wrapping this back around to the point of what I was mentioning first, there's no way that they didn't know that motherfuckers were going to have a bad reaction to that, because Valve has been doing their their cabal, like they call them cabals, right? Like focus groups, hardware surveys and shit like that for like 30 years now, right? So if they did something like that, they did it on fucking purpose, right? They wouldn't fuck something like that up by accident. Um, and you know, part of that, the way I know that is that I don't actually know if you can find them anymore on Steam, but back in the day, you used to be able to find through Valve somehow these little graphs of different maps, and it would have lines on it, and it would actually show the routes that most people take, or just it was like all the different lines and like where they were, the most of them, that would be the most, you know, common path or like whatever. You get what I'm saying? And so they've been collecting data even on what routes players will take in a level. Now, if you ask me, that could actually be used to a really great gameplay extent, but of course they fuck it up. Because what Valve will do with information like that is, oh, this area that nobody ever really went to, we took that out of the level. And it's like, no, the fact that almost nobody ever goes there is why it needs to be there. And this is sort of what I'm saying with, the other videos I mentioned, the feeling of playing old school, like mod versions of CS or just mods in general, or a lot of these games, even when they went retail early on, when they were still fine with trying different stuff and just doing something just to see how it worked out, was that you had stuff like that. You had the routes that kind of didn't need to be there, right? Or they might have even been like kind of like a stupid idea, you know. Uh, but it's just the fact that it was there. It's like, why not have the variety? And it leaves out a lot of gameplay stuff for people like me who they want to find those, hiding spots or just have cool stuff to fucking explore, right? I mean, one of the biggest appeals for me of root canal or whatever, the airboat shit, and then coast, the buggy section of Half-Life 2, was all the places you could stop along the way to just explore stuff, right? But whenever I make multiplayer maps, one of the things I do, like the one I mentioned that all those players on an actual server said they loved it, one of the things I did was, like, every building pretty much is enterable. Like, pretty much anywhere you can find a window to snipe from or put a machine gun or like whatever, right? And just the idea that there's so many ways that you could get a drop on the enemy, and that's a huge aspect missing from a lot of levels. And it's not that the problem with a lot of FPS is not that they're basically giant corridors. It's the fact that there's really no alternate routes to take. And like, it doesn't need to be an open world kind of thing, but it's like, I see this building right here, like CS Assault would be a great example. There's so many different routes that you could take that, like, on the source version, for example, I would add myself, decompile the map, edit it to put in all the stuff I wanted. It's like, why can I not go through this building here? Why can't I go in the parking garage thing? Let motherfuckers go there, go on the roofs of the buildings. And motherfuckers know this, and so even on their custom maps, they'll add that. Most of the custom maps for Dust 1, 2, 3, CS Assault, whatever, you'll notice that a lot of it is them just adding extra routes. And a lot of times they're kind of what I described. It's just sort of like just a corridor with one texture on it, right? There's not exactly a whole lot of detail. But at the same time, it's like, does militia really feel as magical when there's not those weird computers in the sewer that you can use to see the cameras of like where the CTs come through at the start there, right? Like, isn't it cool that there's shit like that? And I don't know, a lot of the life and innovation and creativity and the soul of it, of the artistic, you know, just artistry or whatever of the game stuff just kind of doesn't exist anymore. It's like, nope, this is the loop or the meta or whatever you want to call it. It has to be exactly this. Can't do anything interesting and whatever. I don't know. Games are just so lifeless now, but you know, you would think that Valve could put those together to make a really interesting sort of multiplayer experience, like I mentioned. Like, I noticed that when I was 12 years old and first playing Counter-Strike and Day of Defeat, on the WAN version back in 2003. It's like everybody already knew everywhere I could possibly hide at. And it's like, well, they do all their focus test, focus group shit, cabals, whatever. They do all these hardware test surveys and, they track the routes players take through levels. And then they have this ability, at least with Left 4 Dead 2. I don't think there was anything like that with 1. I think it was introduced with 2. They have the ability to some degree randomize the level. And it's like, so why don't they put all of that together and pull off something kind of like what I wanted? Because that's the issue. It's like, you get used to a level, you get familiar with it. There's kind of no surprises anymore. But at the same time, if it were a new map every single time you played the game, there'd be nothing to really, like get good at or be able to experience more than once. So I always wondered why they don't have shit like that. Multiplayer levels, Dust 2 or whatever retards want to play. But it's like every round, there's routes that change slightly, that might be there or not, or this or that, just to switch it up a little bit, just to make it keep feeling fresh. And, I'll probably never bother at this point, but in the past I've thought about that, finding ways to try to add shit like that to my own levels. But also, I think a big factor is that there's just not enough alternate routes in the first place. You pretty much have the main paths and that's it. Very rare do you have, just different kind of paths on the, the outskirts of the level. More commonly you'll see, kind of underground stuff like militia or this or that. But it would be nice to have like multiple perimeter paths that are purely like pretty much just different ways to go. More of a chance to evade or maneuver around the enemy, more windows or whatever to be in to like get a drop on them or this or that. And, I put a ton of that in my own levels. But I think that mixed with some level of kind of semi randomization type of stuff would work really well for a player versus player type of game like Counter-Strike Source or Day of Defeat. I don't know if there was ever any vanilla maps or even like popular, like just custom maps that really did anything with that. I don't even know if stuff like that is possible in the older versions of Source, but it would have been cool to see shit like that. But yeah, I don't know. I've just always liked to be able to, you know, explore, find places to hide, and even just have, like a sniper, like tower or some tall building window, just to be able to like look down on the whole map and just watch everyone else, right? Not even necessarily try to shoot them, just like watch it unfold or whatever. But yeah, I don't know. I think that's the main thing is modern game design just has no creativity, even though it has the most ability to have the most creativity possible. They just ignore it on purpose, which sucks.